Good morning, everyone. A good Erev Rosh Chodesh. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh Elul. Tomorrow is Friday. We're now entering the time before Rosh Hashanah. Baruch Hashem. It's been a wonderful year. A lot of good things happened this year, and let the year end off on a good note. Okay. Today we're learning Perek Beis of Eduyos. Today's shir is Lili Nishmas Aaron Nachum and Sucha Kohen Yoshu Meis Hashem have an Aliyah and Refuah Shlema for yourself Rachel Leah Rachel Baspas Zelda Rachel Eliana Basir Bacha Aaron Yisrael Bisha Chai V'Stu Bebele Refuah Shlema V'Sto Shar Chol Yisrael and Shefer Bracha V'Atzlacha Tzvi Noach and Bracha Rachel Leah and all his endeavors and Zib Shmuel David and Miriam and Tzvi Ben Chana. Here we go. Okay, Perek Beis of Eduyos talks is relevant to Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim. This is mentioned in the first parak of Psachim in the Gemara. There's a section there Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim. We didn't discuss that in when we did Psachim in Mishnayos because it's not mentioned in Mishnayos. It's mentioned in the Gemara, but there might be a Mishnah in Psachim. Yeah, sorry, Psachim Perek Aleph Mishnah Vav talks about Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim. We're going to talk more about him right now. Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim Heid Arba Dvarim. Rabbi Chanina, the administrator of the Kohanim, he testified regarding 4 matters. The Skan Kohen was the deputy Kohen Gadol, and he was put in place when the Kohen Gadol was unavailable. He was also put in charge of all the other Kohanim. All was all under the Skan Kohen. Not sure when he lived. This might have been during Bayis Sheni. Is my assumption. Don't know. We could look that up. Anyways, so his first issue they testified about, Miyamim Shel Kohanim, in all the days of the Kohanim, in all the days of the Kohanim, lo nimnu melisrov es habasa shenitma bevlada tuma. They did not refrain from burning sacrificial meat from the karbanos that had become tameh by touching a sheni of tuma, thereby becoming a shlishi. Im habasa shenitma ba'avatuma, together with other meat from karbanos that had become tameh by touching an avatuma, thereby becoming a rishon. Afa pish mosifin to tuma al tumasa. Even though by burning the 2 pieces of meat together, they were adding a greater level of tuma to the tuma of the first piece. When the meat that was a shlishi touches the meat that was a rishon while being burned together, then the shlishi becomes a sheni. And its level of tuma thereby increases. Nevertheless, the Kohanim in charge of Beis Hamikdash did not refrain from burning such pieces together. So even though you're increasing its tuma, but it's being burned. So what's the big deal? We see from this that even though it's forbidden to cause tuma to kachim, once thing is tameh, it's allowed to impart a higher level of tumah to it, since it's no longer going to be eaten in any case, but it's being burned on account of its tumah. So you're not making anything more tumah by turning a shlishi into a sheni into a rishon. It's still tumah. You're not eating it. It's an issue to turn it tumah to begin with. We discussed this. Can you burn the truma chametz together with the chulin chametz, and then they got into the whole conversation over there about the basar tameh. That was in Okay, Host Rabbi Kiva went further and was more megal. He says, "Miyamem shekohanim and all this the kohanim lo nimnu the halikas hashemesh and nisla betul yom." They did not refrain from burning oil of truma that had become tamei, that had be, was disqualified. They did not refrain from burning oil of truma that had become tamei by coming in contact with a tful yom. A tful yom, as we touched upon once upon a time, was someone who went to the he completed his tahara process. He went to the mikveh by day, but he doesn't become fully tahor until nightfall, when you can eat truma again as soon as it's going. So, b'ner shenitma b'tamei meis. So let's just read this again. Okay, so lo mimeim shakohanim and all this of the kohanim lo nimnu melahalikas hashemesh inesel b'tul yom. They did not refrain from burning oil of truma that had become disqualified by coming into contact with a tful yom. B'ner shenitma b'tamei meis, in a metal lamp that had become tamei by touching someone who had become tamei from a corpse, which would make the lamp an avatuma. Even though by doing so, they were adding a greater level of tumah to the oil's previous level of tumah. After coming into contact with the tul yom, the oil had carried only a shlishi level of tumah, third degree level of tumah. Whereas upon coming in contact with the lamp, it becomes a rishon. So we see from this that even though it's forbidden to cause truma to truma, it is permissible to make a rishon out of truma that was previously been on the shlishi, since the truma is in any case being burned on account of the tumah. Rabbi Akiva's teaching is more lenient than Rabbi Chanina's because Rabbi Chanina's testimony taught only that it's mutter to raise the level of tumah 1 degree by making a sheni from a shlishi. Rabbi Akiva is demonstrating that you can raise it 2 degrees, going from a shlishi to a rishon. Even that's mutter according to Rabbi Akiva. Mr. Bays, Amar, this part we're going to see in a couple of weeks when we do Zvachim. Amar Rechanina ben Skana Kohanim. Rechanina, the administrator of the Kohanim, said, "Miyamai lo re'isi or yotze levitas reifa." In all my days, I never saw a hide taken out on its own to be burned in the place of burning. At the base of Sreifa, that's where Kabbanas that were possible were burned. He testified that once the hide was removed from the korban, it was never taken to be burned. This shows that after the hide is removed, it is not burned under any circumstances, even if the korban is later discovered to have been disqualified from the start. If the disqualification was discovered before the hide was removed, then the Kohanim would not remove the hide. Rather, they would burn the entire animal as is. But the only possible situation where a hide might be burned on its own is where the disqualification was not known until the hide's removal. So Chanina rules that since he never saw a hide taken out to be burnt on its own, the halacha must be that even in such a case, the hide is not burned, but is given to the Kohanim. Rabbi Akiva says, "Midvarav amanu she'mafshit es habachor v'nimsa treifa she'yoshu haKohanim ba'oro." From Chanina's words, we learned that if someone slaughters and skins a a bechor that has a mum, and is then found to be a treifa, in which case the shechita was puzzled. The Kohanim may still derive benefit from the hides, from the skin, even though the korban is going to be puzzled. Since the shechita was assumed to be valid when it was performed, then the hide remains mutter forever, even though the shechita was later discovered to have been puzzled. Okay. The Chachamim say, "Lo re'inu eino raya." We have not seen, quote unquote, is not a proof. Just because Chanina never saw a hide being taken out on its own to be burned does not prove that it did not or could not happen. Rather, the halach is that the hide of a disqualified korban is taken out to the place of burning, even if the disqualification not discovered until after the hide was removed. Maybe it never happened in his days, or maybe it did happen and he just didn't see it. Maybe he stepped out for a couple of minutes. Who knows? It's not so pashut, according to the Tanaim. Mishnah Gimel. Af hu heid al kvar katan shaya b'tzad Yerushalayim. He also testified about a small village close to Yerushalayim. We're still talking about Perek Kohanim. V'haya bo zakin echad v'haya malve lekol b'nei akfar, in which there was a certain Tam Chacham, a sage, who would lend money to all the people in the village. Because say b'ksav yado, and he would write the loan documents in his own hand and give them to the borrowers. And others would sign the documents. That the borrowers arranged to qualify witnesses to sign the documents. The borrowers would then return the documents to the Tam Chacham, who would then hold on to them as proofs of their loans. In an instant involving one such document came before the Chachamim, and they permitted the practice of a lender writing the loan document. Such a document is valid even though it was written by the person who needs to use it. We trust that the document is accurate because it was signed by qualified witnesses. The fee darkecha atalomed lamed. From this edus, you can learn, by the way, she'isha get ish kosif as shovro, and a man may write his own receipt regarding the ksuba payment that he owed her. It's the power of a document is established only by its signers, the people who sign the document, by its witnesses. As long as the document is signed by qualified witnesses, doesn't make a difference who wrote it. As long as the Edom are kosher, that's all that matters. And the fourth edus that Rabbi Chanina said, he also testified regarding a needle that had become tummy from a corpse. That was found in the flesh of a korban when it was being cut up in the azara. It was not known if the kohen who cut the flesh or his knife touched the needle and thereby became tummy. What touched what? They don't know. It's according to Rechanina, the knife and the hands of the Kohen are tahor, but the flesh is tamei. The Kohen and the knife are tahor because the azara of the Beis Hamikdash is the public area. So the items in question are assumed to have remained tahor. But the flesh of the animal, however, is tamei because it certainly touched the tamei needle. But if the needle was found in the excrement of the animal, inside the animal, everything, including the flesh, is tahor because excrement cannot become tamei. But tumah to anything else. People, utensils, food, and fuel liquids can become tummy. Any one of the four, and therefore it does not become tummy. Mishnah Daled Shlosha Devarim Amar Rabbi Yishmael B'nei Chacham V'Karbi Yavne. So Rabbi Yishmael said three things before the Chachamim in the Beis Medrash of the Sanhedrin that was called Karbi Yavne, the vineyards of Yavne. That was after the Chorban Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so he lived by the second Beis Hamikdash. When the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Sanhedrin moved from Yerushalayim to Yavne as right. Okay. So the first law. Beitza trufa shehi nesona al gabi yarek shel truma. If a beaten egg, meaning the white and the yolk mixed together, that's how you beat an egg, was put on top of a vegetable of truma, shehi chibur. There is an attachment between the egg and the vegetable to a single item. Therefore, if a tful yom touches the egg, even if he does not touch the vegetable, it is as if he has touched the vegetable, making it a shlishi. However, if the egg was shaped like a helmet over the vegetable, so that there's a gap between them, there is no attachment between the egg and the vegetable. Therefore, if a tful yom touches the egg, the vegetable does not become tummy at all. That's the first halacha from Yishmael. The second halacha revolves shikha, which is a forgotten bundle. And if a stalk of grain was overlooked and left standing in a harvested section of the field, the rosh magil kama, but its tip can reach an area standing grain that was not yet harvested. In nixra imakama, the halacha is that if it can be grasped and harvested together with the standing grain, harei hi shel ba'al bayis, it belongs to the owner of the field. He does not need to leave it for the poor because it is not considered shikha. But if it cannot be grasped and harvested together with the standing grain, harei hi shalanim, then it belongs to the poor because it is shikha. This is all we discussed this back when we did when we learned Peya. Back in the wintertime last year. No, it's Elota. And the third law, Algina Katanashi Mukevis Aris, that if a small garden is surrounded by an aris, that's like an aris, if you remember, is 5 vines that are planted in the garden, and their branches extend over a wall that goes around the garden. The halacha is that if there's enough space in the garden for a grape harvester to stand with his basket, which is 2 amos, one for the harvester and one for the basket, on this side, and enough space for another grape harvester to stand with his basket on the opposite side, so the vines on the opposite sides of the garden are at least 4 amos apart. Tizra, part of the garden may be planted with grain. When the vines are positioned so far apart that they are not considered a vineyard, rather they are solitary vines. Therefore, planting grain in the garden is permitted, provided that the distance between the grain and each vine is at least 6 tvachim. However, if there's not so much space in the garden, it may not be planted with grain at all. If there's less than 4 amos between vines and opposite sides of the garden, then the vines are close enough to be considered a vineyard. Planting grain is therefore forbidden everywhere in the garden, because grain must be kept 4 amos away from vines in a vineyard, and the entire garden is less than 4 amos wide. Mishnah Hey, Rabbi Yishmael. 3 things were discussed in the presence of Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael's students asked him what the halacha was in 3 different cases. Lo amad bahem, lo iser, lo heter. But he did not comment on that, neither in favor of Isser nor in favor of permission. He did not rule in any of these cases because the law is not always the same. It changes depending on the circumstances. Perish to Rabbi Yeshua ben Masya. Then Rabbi Yeshua ben Masya explained them. He clarified the circumstances in which the matter is usher and which it is permitted. Hamefis Morsa b'Shabbos. So what are these three cases? Someone who pierces a boil on Shabbos. Im lasos la pechayev. Yeshua rules that if he intended to make an opening, for it, for which the pus would go out and air would come in, he is chayev for doing asur work, avoda on Shabbos. Because he constructed an opening. He opened up the blister, which is asur under the malacha of bona. If he intended only to remove the pus from it, does not care whether the holes close up immediately afterwards, he is not chayiv. The second question: someone who traps a snake on Shabbos, Yeshua rules that if he's involved with the snake only so that it will not bite him, and he has no interest in using the snake for any purpose, Pater, he is not chayiv for doing the malacha of trapping, since he does not want the snake. But if he traps the snake so that he can use it for a medicinal cure or other positive purpose, he is chayiv for doing the malacha of trapping, since in this case he does want the snake. Va'al lafsin ironios. But they become tough, being carried by a zav, while the pots are stuck together. They cannot become tameh by means of an ohel, because tumas ohel is transmitted to an earthenware vessel only if it has an opening, and not if it is completely closed. However, if a zav moves the attached pots, they do become tameh, because this form of tumah transmission works even with earthenware vessels that are closed. Rabbi Elazar ben Sadok says, zav tahoros. They are tahor even when they are carried by a zav, because they are not yet completely formed. The work on the two pots is not finished until they are separated. As unfinished vessels, they cannot receive tumah at all. Mishnah Vav. Shlosha devarim amar Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael ruled about three things, the types of produce that were going to be listed below. Below Hadelo Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva did not agree with him. Hashum v'haboser v'hamalilos sherishkan v'buad yom. If garlic, unripe grapes, or unripe ears of grain were chopped up during the daytime before Shabbos, so the juice will ooze out by itself. Rabbi Yishmael says that he may finish letting the juice ooze out after dark in order to use it on Shabbos. Once the produce is chopped up, the juice flows out on its own without any squeezing. Therefore, even if he were to squeeze the produce on Shabbos, he would not be guilty of a Issa D'Oraisa. Since there is no possibility of a Issa D'Oraisa, then Rabbi Yishmael rules that the Issa D'Rabanan against using juice that oozed out on Shabbos does not apply here. Rabbi Akiva Omer Lo Yigmar. Rabbi Akiva said that one may not let the juice finish oozing out on Shabbos. According to Rabbi Akiva, the Issa D'Rabanan applies even in this case, and the juice that comes out on Shabbos is Asr. Mishnah Zayin Shlosh Devarim Amru Lifnei Rabbi Akiva. Three halachos were said before Rabbi Akiva. Shnayim Mishum Rabbi Elazar. Two were said in the names of Rabbi Eliezer. Echad Mishum Rabbi Yeshua. And one of the name of it, and one was said in the name of Rabbi Yeshua. So these are the two halachas that were said in the names of Rabbi Eliezer. Number one, Yod says, Isha be'er zahav. A woman can go out and put in a Rishus Harabim on Shabbos with the city of gold. The city of gold was a golden tiara that goes on her forehead that was designed to look like the city of Yerushalayim. She can go out with that on Shabbos. She can go out with that on Shabbos because we're not concerned that she might take it off and carry it in Rishus Harabim, which would be as the rest. She's not going to take it off her head. People who raise pigeons for money are also to give edus in court. You guys taking the winnings of the best considered theft under a din derbanan. And this is the one law that was said in the name of Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua has sheretz, b'fichuda. The carcass of a sheretz, one of the 8 species of creepy crawlers that transmits tumah when it's dead, was in the mouth of a weasel. And the weasel was walking over the loaves of Truma. So fake naga, savi lo naga. And there was a doubt whether the sheretz touched the loaves and made them tummy, or it did not touch the loaves. And then the law regarding this doubt is that the loaves remain tahar. This is because the dead sheretz was being moved from place to place, and the rule is that if there is a doubt whether a moving item transmitted tumah, we assume that it did not. Moving right along. Mishnah Ches. Shlosh Devarim Am Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said 3 things. Shnaim Hodu Lo. The Chachamim agree with him about 2 of them. Well, Echad Lo Hodu Lo. And they disagree with him about 1 of them. So which one did they do? Al Sandal Shel Sidayim Sayadim. Rabbi Akiva ruled about the sandal of a line worker. These were wooden sandals that were worn by line workers in order to protect their feet from being burned by the line. Tami midrash that it can become tami through midrash. So even though tumas midrash is a tumah that happens to a person when a person uses an object that was made to support a person, for example, a chair or a pillow, that's a person sits on it, is being supported by it, that's tumas midrash. So even though the sandal's primary use is to protect the worker's foot from being burned by the line, it's also meant to support him as he walks. How many times we say that the shoes are so supportive? It's therefore chayav to the tumas midrash. The second one, Val Shiare Tanor Arba, Rabbi Akiva ruled about the remaining part of a broken earthenware oven that it can become tamei only if it's been ruled that a height of 3 tvachim is enough. So Rabbi Akiva testified that 4 tvachim are required. Hodulo and the Chachamim agreed with Rabbi Akiva regarding these 2 laws. And the third one, Echad Lo Hodulo, and concerning one halacha, they did not agree with Rabbi Akiva. Al Kisei Shenitu Shnayim Michafuyav Zeh B'Tzad Zeh. That this machlokas was about a chair from which 2 boards that were next to each other were removed, leaving just 1 board at the side. So Rabbi Akiva rules that although it can no longer be used as a seat, it is capable of becoming tamei because it can be used as a container. The Chachamim rule that it is tahor because it is no longer fit for the purpose of which it was made. Okay, Mishnah Tes. 2 more to go. Hu Haya Omer, he used to say, we're talking about Rabbi Akiva over here. That a father, through his merits, can benefit his son with beauty, strength, wealth, wisdom, and years of life. And a father, through his merits, can benefit his descendants a certain number of generations after him. And that generation is the time for the reward, meaning that when Hashem promises a person his descendants will be blessed in the future, the blessing arrives after a particular number of generations and not necessarily after a particular number of years. As because the pasuk says in Yeshaya, he who proclaimed that the generations from the beginning, which means that Hashem arranges the affairs of mankind according to the generations. Even though it says, Hashem said to Abraham regarding the geula of his descendants from Mitzrayim, that they will serve them and they will oppress them for 400 years, and then they will leave with great wealth, which specifies a certain number of years. You talked about 400 years. It also says over the Bereshis that the fourth generation shall return here, which identifies a particular generation. The number of generations was the main calculation in this case. So for the Galus of Mitzrayim did not last the full 400 years; it only lasted 210. But it was indeed the fourth generation that entered Eretz Yisrael. Yes, the four generations were intact, even though the number of years were different. Mishnah Yud. Afu Haya Omer. Rekiva also used to say, there are 5 things have a duration of 12 months. Mishpat Dor Hamabo Shnei Chodesh. The judgment of the generation of the flood, from the beginning of the flood until the land dried up, lasted for 12 months. Mishpat Eov Shnei Chodesh. The judgment of Eov lasted for 12 months. Mishpat HaMitzrim Shnei Chodesh. The judgment of the Egyptians from the beginning of the first plague until Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim lasted for 12 months. Mishpat Gog of Magog la'asulav v'shnei maseh chodesh. The judgment of Gog and Magog that will come in the future before the final Geula will last 12 months. Mishpat Rishayim b'Gehenim v'shnei maseh chodesh. And the judgment of the wicked in Gehenim lasts for 12 months. We're talking about Rosh Chodesh tomorrow. As it says, it'll be from a month to his month. Yeah, all mankind will to prostrate themselves before me, says Hashem. The sinner is judged from a month to his month, meaning from the month and the following year, which is a period of 12 months. Sometimes 13. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says that the judgment of Gehenna can be as short as the period between Pesach and Shavuos, it is 49 days. As it is said further in the same pasuk, from a Shabbos to a Shabbos, which so here you're not talking about a 7-day Shabbos. You're talking about that by Pesach is called the Shabbos. And Shavuos is also referred to as a Shabbos. So, and referring to the length of time between those two Yom Tovim, which is 49 days, and therefore that's according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Okay, that's all for today. We'll continue tomorrow with Perek Gimel. Have a wonderful day. Kol Tov.